Hey everybody, hope you're all doing alright. Combating corruption. So in my opinion, we need a type of filtering system to help us extract all that may or will corrupt us. Now that we're talking about corruption, let's look at the actual definition. So this is from Wikipedia, and the definition of corruption is dishonest or fraudulent conduct by those in power, typically involving bribery. And then this is the second definition: a process by which something, typically a word or expression, is changed from its original use or meaning to one that is regarded as erroneous or debased. So, now that we know that the definition of corruption involves the word bribery, let's take a look at the word bribery. So, the definition of bribery, again, is from Wikipedia. The first definition is bribery is the offering, giving, receiving, or soliciting of any item of value to influence the actions of an official or other persons in charge of a public or legal duty. So, that's the definition of bribery. Now, let's look at what campaign contributions are. Politicians receive campaign contributions and other payoffs from powerful corporations, organizations, or individuals in return for making choices in the interests of those parties or in anticipation of favorable policy, also referred to as lobbying. So this is not illegal in the United States and forms a major part of campaign finance, though it is sometimes referred to as money loop. So basically, from my perspective, bribery is not only legal here in the U.S., but it is or has now become an integral part in the way we are governed. So, and then I just wrote a little bit about the hemp plant. So the hemp plant has a huge potential to help solve many of the problems in the world today. So why aren't our elected officials, whom should be serving our best interest, not talking about hemp? Could it be that they are paid not to do so? Hemp jeopardizes the success of all pharmaceutical companies, the entire medical industry, the construction industry, the electrical industry, the food industry, the transportation industry, and this whole climate change issue. I mean, hemp really is, in my opinion, the most versatile tool that we can all start to implement to help combat pollution and sickness on so many different levels. And again, we're not hearing much about hemp from any of the elected officials, from the World Health Organization, from any of these organizations that have tons of resources and information and capability to research information, and yet they're choosing not to talk about the hemp plant. So, I think... And then also, just examining free markets, because, one of the ways that I go about trying to find the solutions to problems is first we got to really sit down and take a look into what is, the reason for all these problems. Why are all of our societies in the world today suffering to, greater or lesser degrees from some type of a sickness, whether that sickness be a corruption in the political system, whether that sickness is, being sold out and, pulled by people with more money to, propagate their own personal agenda, or whether that sickness is an actual physical sickness of a bunch of sick people, which we have here in America. I mean, there's a lot of obese people, there's a lot of mentally ill people, there's a lot of addictions, there's all sorts of sicknesses here in America. And so, it's like, well, where is this all coming from? Like, why is everybody so sick? Why are we all so fucked up? Why are we allowing people whose interests are, focused on their wallet to lead us, to govern us? And what can we do about it? But again, first we got to really go into the nit and gritty details, the specifics of why, we're so fucked up. And again, I'm focusing this mainly on America. I don't know, there's other countries out there, that are probably doing much better than America in a lot of different ways. But, I can't speak on those countries with any type of real genuinity because I don't live in those countries. So I really don't know. But I do know what's going on here in America, and it's gotten crazy. And, you know, when I go and I look up the definition of corruption and it talks about bribery, and then you look up the definition of bribery, and that is pretty much the same definition as lobbying or campaign contributions. I mean, it is what it is. We're being, you know, governed by people who get their main influence from money. So, and again, the hemp plant is going to go and it's going to jeopardize and threaten the amount of money all these corporations are able to make, because one can make all of these things that these pharmaceutical companies and other companies are selling from hemp. And hemp is not a hard plant to grow. It grows very quickly. It's good for everything that it comes into contact with. And it literally has the potential to cure cancer and other really bad diseases like Huntington's, Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's. You know, I mean, these are things that if that type of plant was really implemented in the way that it could be implemented in, it could start saving lives instantly, you know. But again, we don't have a government, in my opinion, that has our best interests at heart. So this is why things like hemp and, you know, tons of other information that's really good and healthy for the human being and the human soul and for Earth and all life as a whole isn't being talked about, because that's not what their interests are in, is helping people. It's the absolute opposite. They're actually, in my opinion, motivated to hurt us and to keep us sick and to keep us weak and to keep us acting as their slaves, feeding off of us. But again, you can only, I mean, we're enabling all this behavior by continuing to play along with this system. This is why, again, like I think we need to come and get over our egos and come to an acknowledgement that this American government has been, you know, infiltrated to such a high degree that trying to work within the system to change things is, in my opinion, futile. And the only other option we have, there's two other options. We can just wait for things to fall apart and everybody can do what they can with whatever little bit of, you know, bit they were able to take out of this crazy puzzle and you know, take care of their own life and their own families and maybe a few close friends that they have. But essentially that future feels very cold and dark and not one I really want to be a part of. The other option is if we all learn to get over our petty differences and really open up our hearts and souls to each other and start communicating together and start really focusing on solution-based ideas to combat these problems and developing systems of government and, you know, commerce that ensures that this type of corruption does not seep in. Because in my opinion, that's the issue here. And that goes back into my opinion, free markets. I don't think they're good. I don't think having a free market is good for any type of a country, because a free market's going to allow any type of product that can be sold to the public to be sold to the public. Even if that product is known to cause detriment and ailments and all sorts of sicknesses in a person and in the populace, a free market, essentially by the word free market, they're going to allow it. They're going to allow anything that can be sold that's not completely like, I mean, poison's even sold. Everything's sold. Guns are sold. We sell drugs. We sell fucking everything. You know, I mean, of course, heroin isn't being sold, although it kind of is if you look at the pharmaceutical company. I mean, they're selling people Oxycontins all the time. You have to pay for all those prescriptions unless you have health insurance, which is also something you have to pay for. So you're still having to pay for it. But, you know, and you got to think too, a free market like the earth, like I believe it's, you know, it's been relayed to me that, you know, Mother Nature is the Holy Spirit. It's the grand comforter. You know, it gives us our creature comforts. It takes care of us. It gives us sustenance here in this physical plane. How do you think the earth would feel if it knew, or if it does know, if it's consciously aware of the fact that there's a very large amount of attention and work and effort being put into exploiting and extracting precious earth resources for no other reason than to continue to profit? You know, we're using resources from the earth to perpetuate more cell phones, to perpetuate more vehicles, to perpetuate more fuel, to perpetuate more houses that are built in a style that's non-conducive for the electromagnetic energy of just energy itself, and especially of us human beings. All these squares we live in, I do a circle, all these squares we live in, they're not good for your overall being. They're not good for your energy flow. They're not good for your feng shui. They're not good for the feng shui of the overall environment. They're also not good in withstanding weather. I mean, when you build houses that are squares, you're essentially putting walls up or putting curtains up or putting, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? The sailboat, your sails up, so that when wind comes, if you're dealing with a flat structure like that, it's going to be that much more able to capture the wind's energy than a building that was built circular, aerodynamic, geodesic, which is what Mark was all about, getting back to geodesic domes, because they're just so beneficial in so many different types of ways, and they are. It's like you think about a government, like a real government that had people's good interests in heart. One regulation they might impose is like you're not allowed to build houses that are squares in tornado alleys. It makes no sense whatsoever. You're putting literally a sail in the middle of a place where you have absolutely devastatingly turbulent winds, and you're allowing this structure to be built there, knowing that if a tornado were to go through there, it would rip it apart in seconds. Like, what type of a good government would allow us to build these type of things? It's a wicked government. They allow us to build these type of things because they're profiting off of it. And at the end of the day, they're like, that's where government is supposed to step in and be that larger, that higher perspective of thought for humanity to help steer us to a good way, to a healthier way of living. But they're not doing these things. They're doing the opposite of that, because we've been infiltrated. Like I said, I think America was built with a lot of good intent, but that was a long time ago. Like, the stuff has been sold out. Like, we've been corrupted. We've allowed giant corporations to come in and make monopolies on shit. And, now because of the lobbying laws, which I haven't even gone into, but, something tells me that this lobbying, this whole aspect of lobbying, which to me is bribery, somehow snuck its foot in a very devious manner. And once it's now been allowed to do its thing, it's just flourished. And now we've got this whole plethora of, people that do things basically only because they're going to get paid more money to do it. And when you do that and you care not to look at the actual consequences of your actions in the collective of all of life, it's a very selfish act. It's a very wicked act, and it's very much aligned with a love of money is the root of all evil. That is their MO, is making more money, is gaining more control, is gaining more. With that money, they can go and they can buy children. They can buy all this other fucked up shit and do fucked up things with it. That seems to be their MO right now. What else can you say when you have a whole government that's, practically built on bribery to get elections done and won? And it's not just the government. It goes into sporting. It goes into everything, in my opinion. So, anyways, I just wanted to share with you guys a few words, and just to help continue to, just share with you guys how corrupt this government really is and how it really works. And a lot of you guys already probably know this shit, but again, for me to try to get the proper motivation and essence and momentum to figure out the solution to the problem, I got to first feel like I really, really have the specifics of what caused the problem, comprehended in my own personal being. So I'm still learning about this stuff, and creating a whole infrastructure, a whole new society. If we're not able to look back into the mistakes that we made and what got us here, then we're just doomed to repeat them. I think it was Einstein who has the famous quote that if one doesn't learn from the mistakes of the past, they're going to repeat them. And so in my experience, if you go back, even back into Roman times, like a lot of America is very similar to the way ancient Rome, We don't have slaves like they used to have slaves, but when you think about it, they kept, like, the gladiatorial games, the Colosseums, like watching people kill each other and also animals, like that was their way of entertainment. And I think the Romans used that entertainment to help keep the populace under control, to help keep them underneath a type of spell, to help give them some type of contentment that was going to keep them from rioting and being fucking lawless. And, it gave them a way to channel their suppressed feelings of, uneasiness and unwellness with the current government into blood sports, into watching others get killed. When you can do that, when you're watching other people get killed and slaughtered and animals getting killed and slaughtered, like, there is, I think, a type of alleviation of one's pain when you're watching somebody else go through pain. But the problem with the Romans is, instead of trying to figure out healthy ways to do things and a fair system of commerce for everybody in all of life, they went after the money. They went after the gold. They went after the glory. They kept on invading other foreign countries when they didn't need to. They did it for their own selfish, greedy reasons. That has an inherent spiritual effect on the whole the whole nation of Rome and everybody involved in it, depending on what degree they were involved in it. So, and I think a lot of the Romans and the higher ups knew about this, so they knew that there was going to be this bloodthirsty desire inherent in Romans, so they gave them these games to watch and go to and participate in if they want to, which would help, to deal with that void that's being built from being evil people. But again, if you live by the sword, you die by the sword, and if you look into the story of Spartacus, which is one of my favorite stories of all time because it's a true story, and it's about a dude who got put into slavery because he didn't want to follow the Roman way of doing things. And while being a slave, while learning these gladiatorial arts, he was able to, free himself and a bunch of other slaves from the prison that he was being kept in. And then from that, he decided not only did he didn't decide to just leave and flee, he decided to continue to stay and try to free other slaves. It's a beautiful story. It's also a story about leadership, and I had a conversation with a buddy of mine who, he wants to get away from leaders, people needing leaders. And it's like, I get what he's saying. He wants to try to empower the individual to be more of their own leader. And I do think that's good. And we need to work more on that and stop putting so much energy in other idols and other figures that, we put above ourselves. But I do think leaders can be extremely powerful, and a real good leader can teach one to lead himself. But there are people that are just a little bit more in tune with that frequency or that vibrational, essence than others. And I think it's good if they are that way, if they are able to lead their own life and themselves and what they really want to do with their lives in a good way, to share that with other people, especially in a time when so many other people are lacking that. It's good for a leader to just lead by example. I'm not saying that we have to follow him, the rules that he says, like he's some type of dictator. No, there's many different types of leaders. If we didn't have somebody like Spartacus doing what he did with the slaves, all those slaves would have never been freed. And if you look into Roman history, I'm pretty sure after Spartacus, now Spartacus didn't win. Like the Romans did eventually defeat the slave army, but Rome was never the same again. Like he essentially, what he did had to, they stopped with the slaves. They stopped with the whole gladiatorial games. They stopped the Colosseum. They stopped allowing slaves to train in combat like that. And on top of that, like there was, because a lot of tension happened amongst Rome and Rome's generals in itself over the Spartacus issue. So I think that a lot of what Spartacus did and his army did disrupted the whole good flow of Rome. And I'm pretty sure shortly thereafter, the whole Spartacus thing, Rome came to an end. So, I mean, that was huge. I mean, that wouldn't have happened if Spartacus hadn't chosen to be a leader and do what he did and, get where they're at. So there's also William Wallace. I mean, we've all seen Braveheart, or most people have probably seen Braveheart. Again, another story of just he wanted to just be a commoner. He didn't come from any noble backgrounds. He just, I don't know how accurate, the movie is to the actual man, William Wallace, but in the movie, they portrayed him as somebody who just wanted a simple life. He just wanted to raise crops and have kids and be around friends and family and live a peaceful life just doing that. But again, the English, they come in and they, implement certain laws. Like once the Scottish get married, because English, law supersedes Scottish law because they're in military force and power, that now whenever two Scottish couples get married, the English noble of that land gets to have sex with, the wife before the Scot does. It's a way of breeding them out of power. It's a way of inserting their seed into a different seed, into a couple seed, into a pure seed that just comes together in love, and they want to, that's their enemy is love. So they're going to do whatever they can to disrupt love. So one of the ways they did this was by having these English lords giving them the rights to go and bed the Scottish bribes on the evening of their marriage to get their seed into the Scottish woman's seed. And it's also just a public humiliation and a way of spiritually and physically and mentally dominating your populace, by fucking them, by that person having rights over sleeping with his wife rather than the husband. Now the husband is not the first one to sleep with his wife. It's this other dictator dude who runs the land. I mean, it's disgusting. But again, William Wallace didn't want to be a warrior or a fighter, but he just rose to the occasion when he saw that there was a huge issue and a huge problem, and also that he had the ability to see a way out, to navigate, to have the strategy and the passion and the will and the heart to take on these English and not be afraid of them, and help, encourage others to be like him. But he didn't want to do these things at the end of the day. It's kind of similar to myself. Like, I would love to have, a simple life, a life of just growing. I mean, I'm sure, after living that simple life for a while, I would start to want to more, things in my life. But at the end of the day, I don't want to fight all the time. I don't want to have to be looking over my shoulder all the time. I don't like living in conflict all the time. But I know that there's a time and place for everything. And right now, if you look at all that's going on in the world, conflict is inevitable. Like, we've already got war in a certain part of the world, and we're already seeing rumors of more sufferings and more shortages and more issues that are going to be much more present in our everyday lives than we've ever been used to. So that's a conflict of its own. So one can either choose to sit back and watch these conflicts consume us, or one can choose to sit back and try to create and come up with solutions to help, combat these conflicts and turn them into resolutions. So anyways, yeah, just a little bit I want to share with you guys. But hope y'all are doing well, and I love you guys. Take care. All right, bye.